For today's event, we'll be listening to Crystal Richard. Crystal Richard is the award-winning entrepreneur and publicist behind Crystal Richard & Co., a boutique PR and creative agency that helps small businesses, non-for-profit organizations, and brands make waves in the media. A natural storyteller since birth, Crystal is also the founder of East Coast Mermaid, a lifestyle brand helping people worldwide develop a coastal crush on New Brunswick. This workshop will explain how to get started on getting social media coverage for your small business. In this presentation, Crystal will take us through a handful of easy ways to get started, covering in news as early as next week. Sorry, take it away, Crystal.
Thank you so much. And just to double, in case anyone's now panicking, we're going to talk about media coverage. So social media will be a little part of it, but it'll be media coverage. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm going to start by sharing my slides with all of you. Here we go. Perfect. Can everyone see this? Oh, I'll present here. Oh my goodness. Present. Perfect. Oh, I think someone might have a mic on. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I keep saying good morning. I'm actually doing this. I'm out on the West Coast for work this week, so it's still morning over here, and I keep needing to remind myself that it is the afternoon back home. So welcome. I am going to be sharing these slides with all of you after today's presentation. So don't worry about taking notes with anything that is on the screen. If you are seeing it on a slide, it will be shared with you so that you can read it, understand it further, ask further questions. I'm going to leave my contact info at the end of this presentation, so don't hesitate if you have any questions about anything I talk about today. And of course, I'm leaving tons of room at the end of this presentation to open the floor up to questions for you. PR is such a wonderful thing that you can do for your business, and what you're going to realize today is that it's something you can absolutely do on your own. And so I'm going to invite you at the end today to ask any questions that you have. I'm here to answer your questions, to give you advice, to even recommend what media outlet you might want to go after. If you're able to share a quick elevator pitch of what you do and why you want to get media coverage, I'm here to help. So please don't hesitate. I will be taking the questions at the end of the presentation, but I know how it is. Sometimes you have a really great question and you're going to wait until the end, and then it magically disappears. So if you have one of those questions, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat box. And then once I've gone through all of our slides, I will open the chat box, and then I can go through each question and answer them at the end. So, all right. So today we are here to talk about how to start getting media coverage for your small business. So again, I'm Crystal. I'm a publicist, I'm a digital creator, and I'm an entrepreneur from New Brunswick. My husband and I live in Dieppe, New Brunswick, and we also spend quite a bit of time on beautiful Grand Manan Island off the coast of Maine, where we have a cottage. So kind of divide our time between the two places. I love to travel. I'm obsessed with sea glass. If you follow me on my personal account, East Coast Mermaid, on Instagram or on Facebook, you will see I post about sea glass a lot. And we also have a 16-year-old rescue cat with thumbs named Bella, who travels everywhere with us in her little backpack, including on the ferry to the island whenever we go over there. But of all these things that I love, something else that I love very, very much is helping small business owners and my cat make waves in the media. So I really wasn't kidding. If you look at this little screenshot, you will see that I really do get small businesses and my cat through me media coverage. So I wanted to start off with this example of the time that my cat was featured on CTV News Atlantic this December, and to share a bit about how this experience came to be so that you really understand that at the root of anything you're going to do about media coverage, it comes down to relationships and being able to communicate with journalists and producers and video journalists and podcast hosts, and getting to know them so that when they have an opportunity to do a story where you might be a good fit, they know to reach out to you, and they know that you're going to be very helpful and ready to help them make that coverage become a reality. So back in December, Taylor Swift, who I know is a very hot topic right now with her new albums that just dropped last week, Taylor Swift was having her birthday, and our local animal shelter, PAW, had decided that they were going to do what they were calling the Taylor's Challenge, where they were inviting everyone to donate $13 to the shelter. They were inviting you to recreate the photo of Taylor on Time magazine. That was a classic with the cat over her shoulders. So, of course, being a cat mom, I decided I was going to not only recreate the photo, but donate to PAW for the $13 and post about it on social media. And of course, I'm very well connected with our CTV journalist in the Moncton area. I've worked with her on a lot of stories for clients. And so next thing I know, I get a text message from Alana saying, "This is a super weird request, but is there any chance I can come to your house and interview you and your cat this afternoon for Live at 5 tonight?" And if you're from the Maritimes, you know, or if you live here, you know that Live at 5, CTV News at 5 is a bit of a local gem. And so, of course, Bella was turning 16 that month. It was just the perfect way to celebrate by saying, yes, you can absolutely come over to my house and interview my cat. But this opportunity would not have happened had I not been active on social media and posting about the things that I was doing, both as a business owner and a cat mom. That posting about that is what had CTV reach out to me. But it also helped that I knew the journalist and I had worked with her in the past. So she knew if I reach out to Crystal, she's probably going to do everything in her power to make this media opportunity happen for me today. So if there's anything you take away from today, it's that putting yourself out there and making sure that people know that you want media coverage and you want to attract it while making friends with journalists is so very important. All right, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is media coverage? So media coverage can mean features on websites like the Globe and Mail, Forbes, Chatelaine, Maclean's, Canadian Business Magazine. It can be radio interviews on CBC Radio, maybe on your local radio station. It can be a podcast interview, perhaps on your favorite podcast, or it can be a TV segment on TV like CTV News, where Bella was featured, global news. If you are in bigger cities across Canada, that might look more like the social TV, breakfast television, CBC The National. There are tons of opportunities to still be on TV these days. And maybe media coverage for you is as simple as being in your local newspaper, which can also still be very popular and very powerful for you as a small business owner. At the end of the day, what I want you to know about media coverage is that it is incredibly valuable for your small business. Now, you might hear a couple different terms thrown around in the business world, and those terms are earned media and paid media. Now, I always like to distinguish the two because you might hear someone say, you know, oh, we really want to do a story on you, but there's going to be a cost associated. And so you're wondering, is that media coverage? Is that not media coverage? So I wanted to sort of break these two down. Earned media coverage is coverage that you did not pay the publication to receive. It is unbiased coverage from an outlet that has taken the opportunity to interview you, to learn about your story, and then they have gone and written an article about you or your business. Most often you have not seen the article before it's published, so you don't have a chance to weigh in and say, I don't like this, change this. It is what they have taken from that interview and written about you in their publication. Earned media can be newspapers, TV, radio. It can be podcasts. I know now there are some podcasts that charge for you to be a guest on them. That's no longer considered earned media. That's paid media. But earned media in the truest sense is media that you did not pay to receive. Paid media, on the other hand, are paid placements. That can be sponsored articles. So perhaps you've been on a website recently and you've seen an article, and at the top of the article or the end of the article, there's a disclaimer and there's a brand logo, and it very clearly states that this article has been sponsored by that company. Sometimes that company wrote the article in-house and had it placed. Other times it is written by a staff writer at that publication, but they have worked closely with that outlet who has in some way controlled the conversation and what is shared. So that is considered paid media. Here in Atlantic, Canada, we have Atlantic Business Magazine. I've had a lot of clients in the past that have done paid advertorials with Atlantic Business Magazine where they've had an article written about them, but then on the next page, there's a full page spread that is essentially an ad about their company. So that's what earned media or paid media is, sorry. Both are very powerful. Both can help you make waves in the media. But what I want you to know today is that earned media does not have to cost you a thing. And that includes, you don't need to have a publicist on retainer. You don't need to hire someone like me to get media coverage. There are steps that you can take and things that you can start doing as early as this afternoon when you get off this call. If you're all excited and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to go send a pitch, you can start doing that today on your own and it doesn't have to cost you anything. So I talk about how media coverage is incredibly valuable for your small business or your brand. Why? The first step, and perhaps the most obvious one, is that it attracts new customers and clients, especially if you are a new small business and you haven't really had a chance to get a lot of users, clients, customers. You want more people to know about you and you want people to buy your product. So anytime you get a media opportunity, making sure that you give people an opportunity to know where they can buy from you, how they can contact you, how they can reach out is really important. And if you're on TV, there's always a chance to have your website, on the screen. The reporter will say to find out more or to shop their store, go here. But I like to always give the example. I'm going to share a lot of examples today because I find if you get tangible examples, it kind of helps you picture how that might work for your brand. Last summer, I did an interview with the Weather Network about sea glass, of all things, through East Coast Mermaid. So this segment that I did with the Weather Network was aired across Canada, and I was basically educating the public on what is sea glass, why is it so popular, why is it having a moment, and what do some people do with sea glass. Now, I have tons of sea glass all over my office. I'm not crafty at all. I don't do anything with it, but I have a friend that makes beautiful sea glass jewelry. So Nathan Coleman, the reporter from the Weather Network, said, "Do you have any examples of what people can do with sea glass?" And I said, absolutely. So I shared with him this 3-second B-roll clip of one of these beautiful chakra necklaces that Celicia does that she sells for, I think it's about $300. It's beautiful. And it's all the different chakra colors of sea glass, which when you're talking about sea glass, finding things like yellow and orange and red are very, very rare. So this necklace is incredibly valuable. And Celicia made it with the idea that maybe one day someone out there would buy it. So my segment airs on the Weather Network across the country. And of course, I get an email from a gentleman in Ontario who saw it on TV, saw the necklace, and had to buy that necklace for his wife. He couldn't find anything about it online because I didn't technically have a chance to plug what her website was. So he sent me a message and said, I need this necklace. I introduced him to Felicia, and 5 minutes later, she sold that necklace that she'd been holding on to for the last couple months to the perfect person that wanted it for his wife because she loves sea glass. So that one little piece of media coverage that didn't take me a whole lot of time to pitch landed her that fantastic sale. So you never know what can happen once you get in the media. And of course, it can increase sales just like that. So if you have a website and there's an opportunity to link to your website in a media outlet, that's a great way to drive people to your site to buy your product. It can help you grow on social media. So I have a client from Ontario that was just on CTV News at 5, as well as CTV Morning here in Atlanta, Canada last week. And immediately following both segments, she started to get a wave of new followers on Instagram, all from Atlanta, Canada. So for a small business from Ontario that doesn't exactly have a presence here in Atlanta, Canada, she suddenly has all of these new followers that know about her platform and know about what she does just by getting on our local coverage here. So if you're looking to expand into new markets and reach new areas, regions, cities, provinces, whatever that might be, getting media coverage in those locations is a great way to start increasing awareness. And last but not least, it can attract potential investors. So if you're a company that's just starting out and you're really trying to raise some funds to make all of your dreams come true and hire and grow and scale, getting media coverage is a great way to get in front of new investors. One of the examples that I always love to share, I had a client back in my agency days, so this was about 15 years ago now, that had a golf app. And we booked them a segment on a popular morning show down in Florida in a golf area. So they did this interview out on the golf course. It went great. It aired. They didn't really notice a ton of signups, and they didn't really know what was wrong if they hadn't done the right, audience research to know who they were talking to, who they were targeting. And they kind of thought it was a bust because they had to cover, it was earned media, so nothing was paid for. They had to cover their own flights, their golf fees, their hotel. And so they were a little discouraged until they got an email from a gentleman who lived in that area, who watched that morning show every day with his wife. And he happened to be an angel investor and he loved what they were doing. And he was a big time golfer. So he decided to invest in their company. So for them, that experience that went from being a bust went to being a huge win just by one piece of coverage. So above all, media coverage creates credibility and it creates awareness for your business. So again, more customers, more sales, more potential investors, more opportunities. Okay, so all of this sounds great, but how can you do this on your own? And I'm really happy to report that if you're able to dedicate an hour, 1 hour a week, you can start making this stuff happen too. So here's how. I'm going to kind of give a quick overview. So You want to start by dedicating an hour a week. I'm a huge calendar blocking fanatic. My whole calendar is blocked down to, the day and the minute and the hour, well, not the minute, but the hour of what I'm doing, what clients I'm working on during that hour, who I'm pitching, what I'm doing. So if you are into calendar blocking as well, or you just use a basic calendar for organizing your day, I want you to start putting in at least an hour, preferably on Monday, Tuesday, where you're going to sit down and you're going to dedicate that hour to getting media coverage for your business. So one day that might look like just figuring out what story you want to tell. And another day that might look like finding the outlet and sending the pitch, which I'm going to tell you how to do as we move on in this presentation. But I want you to set aside that sacred time that you are going to dedicate to getting media coverage for your business. And what I'm also going to want you to do, and I'll talk about this a bit later, is I want you to start following journalists in your area and journalists for outlets that you want to see your business covered in on X, or formerly known as Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but I realize it's now called X. That's another thing you can do to start getting media coverage ASAP. And three, I don't want you to be afraid to ask for an introduction from your business besties and people you know in your network who've been getting media coverage and who are out there appearing on TV and getting interviews on podcasts. Don't be afraid to ask for advice from them, ask for introductions. But again, I'm going to talk about all of this on today's presentation. So the first one, when you set that hour aside, you've heard the saying, just keep swimming. I want you to just start pitching. So what exactly is a pitch? A pitch is the email you will send to the media to position yourself and your company as a potential story, a potential segment, a guest, an expert source. I send anywhere from a dozen pitches a day to sometimes hundreds of pitches a day or a week, depending on what my clients are announcing, what we're doing, if we've got big launches. But it's at the end of the day, it's just an email. I'm sure you write emails all of the time for work and for business. So writing a pitch does not have to seem so scary and daunting. It is just writing an email. Your pitch should be fresh, it should be well researched, it should be timely, and it should be relevant to an outlet's audience. So I want to start with talking about fresh. If you have an announcement that you're going to make, maybe that's a funding announcement, maybe that's a new location, a new product that you're launching, maybe you're hiring a new executive. If you have something that's new that you have not announced, that's fresh. That's something that you want to send to as many media outlets on the same day as you can, because once one or more of them cover it, then it's no longer breaking news or fresh news. So if you have an announcement coming up, we're going to take that hour you've dedicated and you want to try to reach out to as many of your outlets that you have on your wish list in that hour about that news while it's still news. It doesn't have to always be fresh news. So you can also send really interesting, human interest pitches, thought pieces. And that's where something, that's well researched really comes into play. So one of my clients is in the menopause space, and we like to include all kinds of data about, there's 10 million women in Canada currently going through menopause. And here are the hundreds of billions of dollars this is costing economies and employers. So by putting together this story about, what we're seeing in this world for employers who have women who work with them who may be experiencing menopause and how this is affecting their productivity and how many of them are actually leaving the workforce, we can build a really compelling story about that company that we can pitch an outlet and say, hey, have you ever thought of doing a story about menopause in the workplace? So that's not necessarily something that's breaking news. It has a longer lifespan. We can keep pitching that for weeks, if not months, because more and more outlets are realizing, oh, wow, this is something we need to be talking about. Timeliness is another big thing. So on Monday, we celebrated Earth Day. So I had a couple pitches that went out that were Earth Day focused, talking about different things that we can do to protect our forests, to protect our oceans. And you also, last and most also very importantly, want to make sure it's relevant to an outlet's audience. So if you are a tech startup, you're probably not going to be pitching a women's outlet unless, of course, your tech product is femtech related. If you have, let's say you're a beauty brand or a makeup brand, you might not necessarily pitch a travel outlet that's only covering travel. unless, of course, your product is, say, a travel essential and something that a person would need to have when traveling. So always be very mindful when you're writing your pitch and you're thinking about the outlets that you want to pitch, that what you are pitching them is something that is relevant to their audience and readers. Because if it's not, that journalist is going to take a look at your email, and that's probably going to be the last time they're going to open an email from you. It's sad but true. Journalists, it doesn't take much to end up on their blacklist or spam list to not hear from them again in the future. So making sure that you are putting together a pitch that you know is great for their outlet and that their readers and audience is going to love is very important. Next, be as concise as possible. I always say your pitch should be no more than 200 to 300 words at most. I like to try and stay under 200 words. Journalists are very, very busy. The shorter your email can be, get your points across to them. If they're interested, they will write you back, they will set up an interview, and that's where you can talk about your company as much as you want. So when you're writing a pitch, and I'm going to show a pitch example here in a moment, you want to start by introducing yourself. You want to personalize it. So if it's a writer that you've worked with in the past, you can mention something that you might know about how's their dog. I actually, fun story, had a former journalist who now works in a marketing agency. I had a call with her this week, and she took time to say, I just want to say we love what you do and we love how you work with journalists in the media. And she said, I still remember when you used to pitch me, I always looked forward to your pitches because they were well researched. You weren't wasting my time. But she said the thing that stuck out the most was that you remembered to ask how my cat was. It's little stuff like that. If you're contacting a journalist and you know that you follow them on Twitter and you know that they just got a puppy, ask how the puppy's doing. Mention that you love the photo that they shared on Twitter. If they have an article that they've written recently that you loved, mention that. Don't just start the email off with, hey, my name's Crystal and I think you should write about this story because it's awesome. Take the time to email them like you would any other human being. So introduce yourself, share your story idea in as few words as possible, and then share a few talking points. Talking points are really important if you are pitching a TV segment, a radio show, anything that's going to be, a 5 to 6 minute segment where breaking it down and showing here are the different talking points I think we could cover that would interest your viewers or your listeners is really key because it helps that journalist visualize what that segment or episode will look like. And of course, make sure your subject line is catchy. Some journalists get hundreds, if not thousands of emails a day. I mean, when you're going into outlets like the New York Times and Forbes, they get so many emails. So making sure that whatever you put in your subject line, don't just put story idea. Do you know how many emails in their inbox have the subject line story idea or potential story idea? Actually put something captivating in your subject line that when they see that, they'll immediately want to open it. And most importantly, and this is something new that I've been doing this over a decade, and I've only had to start talking about this now, don't use AI to write your pitch. I know it might seem very efficient and a huge time saver to pull up ChatGPT and say, write a pitch about my company and why they should be covered. Don't do it. Journalists know the telltale signs. If they see that you used AI to write the pitch, they will blacklist you very quickly. There's a lot of outlets now I know that have had posts that said, if you pitch us an AI article or an AI pitch, we will never work with you again. So just don't do it. They really can spot the difference. Okay, so here's a pitch that I wrote. It's on behalf of one of my amazing clients, Satya Organic, that is a Vancouver company. And I wrote this pitch, I didn't actually send this pitch to anyone, but it's very similar to ones that I have sent in the past. So I thought that I would share this one. Cassie is not a real person. I just invented her for the purpose of this pitch to kind of show you how I would break this down. And this is based on a pitch that has been successful in the past. So you know that what's in here works. So I start off with a must-have for your next adventure in that subject line. If I see that, I'm going to want to know, okay, what is my must-have? I'm at least going to be curious enough to open it up and see what's in this email that I need to know about. I start off by saying, hi, Cassie. So huge thing is just using the journalist's name. It can be so tempting to say, good morning, hello. Don't ever say to whom it may concern or anything like that. Personalize it. You are emailing another human being that's just trying to get their job done at the end of the day, and you want to help them by giving them an amazing story to write about. Use their name and make sure it's spelled right. Always double check to make sure it's spelled right. I've made this mistake before. I've also made the mistake of, in my mind, their name was Cassie, but I thought it was Stacy. It happens to the best of us. So always double check the names to make sure that you put them down correctly. So you'll see I opened the email by saying, telling her how much I love the story she did for Condé Nast last week about packing carry-on only for Italy. I mentioned that we're planning a trip there next year. And then I've bookmarked her article for future reference because it was so great, and mentioned how awesome the tips and recommendations were. So this is a little bit of, flattery, pat on the back, love your work. In this real life concept of when I did send this email, it was a journalist I've worked with in the past, so she knew who I was. But this is a great way if you're emailing a journalist for the first time, just to give that little personal touch so that they know who you are. So I'm very clear. I wanted to reach out today to put a travel friendly product on your radar that I think your readers will love. That's my intent. Then I go into 2 sentences talking about who my client is, what they're known for, what their best-selling product is. I name drop a celebrity that likes their product. And then I go into my talking points of why I think she should be interested in this product for future articles about packing carry-on only. I talk about how it doesn't need to go in the liquids bag. I talk about how it can, avoid spills. It's great for a number of skin issues, so they can bring this product to treat everything from dry skin to blisters to insect bites to after sun care. And I've also thrown in the fact that it comes in a refillable stick or jar, and that's helping keep plastic out of the ocean. And then I wrap it up very quickly by saying, we'd love to send you a stick, no strings attached. Is this something that might interest you? If you're not pitching an actual product, you can just leave that as, I'd love to know if you would be interested in learning more about our company, about what we do, and I'd be happy to set up an interview to chat with you further. So once you've gotten your pitch down, who do you send it to? Who is the media? So every outlet, you're going to have journalists, you're going to have editors, you'll have producers, radio, podcast hosts. The person that you're pitching, it's going to depend on the outlet. I always like to caution, if you can avoid sending a news desk email a pitch. A news desk email is one that goes to the news desk or everyone on the team. And those are the emails that often get overlooked because they just get so many. Because not everyone has attended one of these workshops to hear from someone like me to say, actually seek out someone that's a real human that can read your email, that you can personalize that pitch, because they have a bigger opportunity of getting that story told for you. So to break this down, if you're looking at digital outlets, a couple options are going to be a writer or a journalist. So you might, I put writer or journalist because a lot of outlets now have freelance writers or contributors who they're not exactly a staff writer. So they write for themselves and they pitch their ideas to different publications. This can work in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't work in your favor. The beauty of staff writers, if you can find someone that has a staff email and works for the outlet, is that they can usually go straight to their editor and say, I want to do the story. And the editor says yes or no. Freelance writers sometimes need to shop that article around, but where there is actually a silver lining to that is that they have more opportunities to pitch that story. So where a staff writer can only pitch that article to their editor, and that editor can say yes or no, and that's it. That's all. If they say no, you're not getting the article. A freelance writer, if they get a note from their first editor, they can shop that to other outlets. So there's pros and cons to pitching staff writers versus freelance writers. Same thing with pitching producers. So if you're reaching out to a TV outlet, you're going to want to either pitch the news anchor or host. For some news outlets, those anchors are celebrities in themselves. It would be like pitching Jennifer Aniston's character on the morning show. She probably gets a lot of emails. She probably doesn't have a chance to read all of them. So if you can go after a producer, that's actually sometimes an easier way to get a TV segment through, because those anchors have to pitch it to the producers anyway. So if you can go straight to a producer, you can typically find, I love to go on LinkedIn and just type in the TV outlet and the word producer to pull up and see who is doing the producing. That's a great way to expedite that opportunity. Radio, you can sometimes pitch the host or a producer, same thing. And podcast, you'll often pitch the host, the producer. Podcasts often have contact forms you can fill out as well. And sometimes the hosts have, an EA that also vets opportunities for them. So once you've written your pitch and identified who to send it to, it's your time to shine. So before you hit send, I want you to remember just a few tips. I recommend only sending your pitch on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Friday should be follow-ups only. No reporter wants to get an email on a Friday morning or a Friday afternoon when they're just trying to get through their to-do list to cover something before they finish their day. The exception to the rule is if you have, let's say, an event or something going on the weekend, you could pitch a weekend reporter. So if it's a TV outlet, finding who does the news on the weekend. that would be an exception to that rule. But whenever you're pitching people, I try to stick with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And Fridays is a great day to send a quick follow up to your email. Always follow up. Sometimes the best wins come through with the follow up. Send that email and just say, hey, before we head into the weekend, I wanted to take a chance to see if you had the opportunity to look at the pitch I sent you earlier this week. Always try to send your pitches before 2 p.m. local time. Again, it's just a common courtesy. By 3 o'clock, people are trying to finish their tasks for the day. They're trying to get home. So I always try to pitch earlier in the day whenever possible. But I also encourage you to take into consideration time zone. So if you're on the West Coast, but you're pitching someone on the East Coast, pitch during their time zones, pitch when they're active. Another thing is TV segments. If you're pitching a news anchor, they're actually awake and in the studio very, very early in the morning. So I like to try and send them that pitch for when they get off the air, because if they're on the air until say 7 a.m., then they're probably going to do some behind the scenes stuff, review their emails, look at pitches, start working on stories for the next day. So timing it with when they would be getting off air is also a great hack. And the other big thing that is right up there with using AI to write your pitch, never ever send your pitch to more than one person on the same email. I've seen it done before where people try to mass pitch and they BCC everyone. And of course, it doesn't have the personalized approach. There's no name because going to 100 people. There's no, I loved your article last week because it's going to 100 people. Never, ever do that. Always write an individual pitch to the person you are pitching in that moment and hit send. You can still repurpose pieces of your pitch that you sent to that last person, but I still want you to go and open a new fresh email, write that personalized intro, and then repurpose whatever you can into that pitch. So once you've hit send, it's very important to be ready. So if the media responds to you and they are interested in your pitch and they want to have you on the show, on the podcast, interview you for an article, please make yourself available at the earliest convenience possible. If you are actively pitching a journalist, make sure that you are not leaving for Bora Bora on vacation tomorrow or even next week. Save those pitches for when you get back. I always use this. I had a client in the past and he really wanted to get in this outlet. And when they finally wrote back and said, yes, we want to do this story, he didn't give them the earliest availability he gave them to speak to them was 5 days later. And you know what happened? She ended up interviewing someone else. She did her own she loved the story we pitched. She thought it was great. She ended up doing her own research, found someone else to interview, basically took the story that I had worked so hard on. And she wrote that article featuring someone else, all because we pitched the story. He didn't tell me his schedule. You know, he kind of alluded that he was free that week. And then it was, oh no, I can't talk to her until next Tuesday. And we lost that opportunity. So if you are actively pitching, make sure you are available for an interview. I always say if you've got an announcement, keep the day of the announcement open for meetings if possible, so that you do have a couple hours of free time to chat. Also, if you're pitching morning shows, be mindful that you will have to be in the studio sometimes as early as 6:30 in the morning. Just keep that in mind when pitching. You don't want to be in that awkward situation where you pitch yourself to be on a morning show and then they say, all right, be here for 6:30. And then you say, I can't, I've got to get the kids to school. I'm not a morning person, yada, yada. Try to avoid that. Always ensure that you have 2 to 3 business headshots and photos available upon request. So the time to get a photo shoot is not when you get a media opportunity. Make sure that you have those ahead of time. Try to have landscape. Portrait photos are beautiful, but when most articles want a landscape photo to use as the header, a portrait is not going to do the trick. If you're pitching TV, you're also going to want to ensure that you have B-roll prepared. B-roll is basically just video content. They don't use the sound, so it can literally just be a promo video that you have for your company. They'll scrape the sound and just use the video. And if you don't have B-roll, it can be as simple as just shooting some B-roll with your cell phone. I've had people in the past that have literally just taken some video of someone on their team working on a computer with their website open. You can use things like Canva to create really cool B-roll featuring your brand colors, your logos, everything. But just make sure that you have at least 60 seconds of B-roll that they can use so that when they're interviewing you, they can switch to not just having it on your face the whole time. They can also show some B-roll to show your website, your product, what you do. And most importantly, always respond to a journalist as soon as possible. And at the very, most, always within 24 hours. If you do pitch someone on a Friday, be mindful that you should be responding to them if they write you back on a Saturday. So if you pitch someone Friday morning to cover something you're doing on Saturday, be checking your email Friday night. Make sure that you are keeping an eye out for that response. So if you want coverage next week, it's always a great idea to start with your local media outlets. So once you're comfortable pitching and you've written your first pitch, look at going local. Then you can start going national and global. But I always recommend if you're new to pitching, start with your local newspaper, start with your local CBC information morning station. Get comfortable pitching and having those conversations and doing interviews, especially if you haven't done interviews in the past. Start local because local is always way more forgiving. It's oftentimes easier to get local coverage than it is to go after national coverage. So always start there. And here are just a few tips on how to increase your odds of coverage. So again, building pitching into your daily routine. If you have a chance to send one pitch a day, Monday through Thursday, do it. The more pitches you're sending, the greater your odds of getting more coverage. The more you pitch, again, the more you increase your odds. Following journalists on Twitter. So I mentioned this earlier. If you are active on Twitter, once you start identifying the outlets that you want to pitch, identify the journalists you want to pitch. So who's covering those topics that are relevant to you and your business, their beat, as we call it, and start following them on Twitter. Every day I see tons of journalists who are hanging out on Twitter who are looking for sources for stories that they have tight deadlines. They need someone today, and that's a huge opportunity to spot great media coverage opportunities. So hang out on Twitter, follow those journalists, get to know them. This is a great way to find out their dog's name, that their kid won the soccer championships on the weekend, all of these little things that you can use to personalize your pitch. And last, share any earned media coverage. The biggest insult you can do to a journalist is to not share the coverage that they've given you. So make sure that you're sharing media coverage because oftentimes sharing media coverage will actually lead to more media coverage, especially on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is on fire right now. If you share things you're doing and the coverage you've gotten, I notice that comes back with other journalists and writers wanting to learn more about your company and work with you. And finally, if you're in the CEED community, you know the importance of supporting one another. If you have a business bestie who's been covered in the media recently, do not hesitate to reach out to them, to ask for their advice. You don't necessarily need to come out and say, I want an intro to Maria Panapallis at Live at 5. But you can say, hey, I attended this really cool seminar at CEED last week. I'm thinking about possibly starting to pitch the media. Do you have any tips? Do you have anyone you think I should reach out to? And just see where the conversation goes. I'm always very open. If any of my friends need a little bit of help getting buzz about their company or their event, I'm happy to make those introductions. So it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst thing that they can do is say no. But at the end of the day, rising tides float all boats. So don't be afraid to leverage your networking community. And that's it. That is honestly as easy as it can be. I know I covered a lot of information and I've thankfully left 20 minutes for questions. But if you're the type that you are shy and you don't want to ask a question on today's workshop, you can always send me an email, crystal@crystalrichard.com, and I would love to help. And I've also included my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook on here as well that you can check out. But I'm excited to open the floor to questions. So I see I've already got some in here. So Adeline said, are journalists on something else than X if we banned X last year? So I'm guessing you mean on Twitter is what I'm thinking you're asking? Yes. Okay. No. So it's interesting. I'm not a huge Elon Musk fan, and I would love nothing more than to stop using Twitter most days, but I still actively use Twitter because that is still where most of the journalists are hanging out. I have seen some of them hanging out on Threads. So I do follow some journalists on Threads. In the travel space, I'm seeing a lot of travel writers are hanging out on Threads. So if you are doing anything in the travel realm, Threads is a great place to be. But unfortunately, a lot of journalists are still on X. Now, some of them have started Substacks. So that's a new popular thing. I've been actively subscribing to a lot of journalists, especially freelance writers, Substacks, who will send out regular emails that'll say, I'm currently sourcing for XYZ. I need sources for these stories. Here's what I'm looking for. So if you can identify journalists and they have a Substack, some of them are paid, but I do find the free content tends to include what they're sourcing. If you are a fan of Help a Reporter Out, if you've ever heard of Help a Reporter Out, so they were recently acquired by Cision, but they used to do emails 3 times a day with tons of media ops with journalists who are actively looking for sources and products to feature. It was great. And then it kind of went downhill. And then now it's built into the Cision platform and you have to have a Cision subscription. And it's a little frustrating. So a lot of PR pros, I know, we stopped using it because it was a waste of time and it wasn't ideal. The founder of the original help a reporter out, came back and started a new one called Hero. So the other one was Hero. This one's called Hero. It's very scrappy right now and bootstrapped and pulled together, but he's already getting awesome journalists. So I would be happy to I will share that link when I share the slides to subscribe for that because it's super helpful and that's a great way to get national and global coverage. Okay, can you pitch before your product is out? That's a great question. So, yes and no. If you're pitching before your product is available, you're going to want to not necessarily pitch about your product, but about your experience and you as a thought leader. So, a great example is I know they're not as common, but back in my tech agency days, Kickstarters were all the rage. And we used to get a lot of clients that wanted to get media coverage for Kickstarters. And a lot of media outlets wouldn't cover Kickstarters. And still to this day, they won't cover Kickstarters because there's no guarantee if you have this really super cool product and that outlet talks about it, say it's Good Morning America, and they rave about this super cool product, and all their viewers get really, really excited, but not all of their viewers are necessarily going to go support the Kickstarter, and that product never gets made, then Good Morning America kind of looks a little bad because they raved about this product that never actually came to be. So if your product isn't available, it's less about talking about your product and more about talking about you and your experience. So maybe you're a first-time founder. What's the why behind why you're starting your company and why you're launching this product later this year? Focus on you and your story. If you're a second-time founder or a third-time founder, talk about your experience, you as a thought leader. Why are you an authority? And now you're going to create this new product and release this new product in the world. So starting to focus more on your entrepreneurial story and your journey and getting coverage like that. Because the cool thing about credibility and media outlets is that if you get a bunch of interviews just talking about your story as an entrepreneur, when you launch the website for your product, you can put those logos under the as seen in or as seen on because you, the founder, have gotten that media coverage. So you just have to think about it from a different approach. And then once you're building relationships with those outlets, you have those connections so that when your product does launch, you can circle back and say, guess what? My product just came out. Here's everything you need to know. Here are the photos. Here's everything you can say about it. Here's the link to our website. But it's, again, relationships are so important with media coverage that if you can start building those relationships before your product comes out, that's huge. Great question from Kathy Monroe. To use the logos as seen on, do you need to ask permission? I've never have because I always make sure that I'm linking to the article. So I will get the logo from a like from the site itself. Oftentimes they have them in media kits that are available for advertising on the website. So we'll take that logo. I always just make sure that I'm linking to the article. So I'm not just using the logo in a capacity that's not related to that outlet. I make sure that I'm using the logo and I either hyperlink to the article or I have the article linked underneath. But yes, I know there's a lot of gray area with using copyrighted images and things like that, but I've never in my, 15 plus years of doing this had anyone ever have an issue with using a media logo as long as they were linking to that article. Any other questions? We've got more time.
Yeah, can I ask you?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Actually, my product is it's in an MVP stage, like it's going to be produced in CSK Kitchen at PEI. So I'm trying to form a digestive candy that helps in the secretion of digestive juices and helps to strengthen the digestive process and by secretion of the digestive juices and makes people's gut health better. So at the moment, I'm just working with the CSK Kitchen and they're going to form my product. And after that, they have tested and they have done the sensor testing on 100 people. Then I would just launch my product at the Biofood Tech company in PEI. So my question is, should I start pitching now or should I wait till my product comes out?
So you can absolutely start pitching now.
How should I just make it, how should I make it more glamour and more customer oriented setups so that people can get are aware of it? Is it done through the media? Or
Yeah.
should I just wait till the product is formed and then I just get the coverage?
So I think now is an excellent time to start educating local media and letting them know that you can speak to digestive health. That's the biggest thing I'm hearing is if it's a product to help with digestive health, starting to pitch stories and articles, finding research to back up why our digestive health for most people is not great right now, why it's very important, why it can help if we take care of it now, it can help prevent chronic illness, building stories around that. And then you can talk about as like you can hint at what you are doing now. If you can't necessarily talk completely about the product, you can hint at what's coming. But I think it's an opportunity to educate people about the importance of digestive health and looking at what trending topics are out there. If there's anything in the news that comes out, new research, finding ways to build stories around that and keeping it very educational for now. And then when your product's out, you've had conversations with outlets that are interested in talking about digestive health. And you can come back and say, actually, my product is now available. And then go into that product PR.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
You're very welcome. All right. How to know which media to go to when we start with media. Great question. So again, if you are very, very new to media, I like to recommend looking at a local level. So what are your local newspapers? If you're in Canada, who are your local CBC writers? What stories are they telling? Another great thing that you can do is honestly just take keywords about your company. So again, using the example of working with a menopause client, if I put in Canada and menopause, I'm seeing what outlets in Canada are currently talking about menopause. The topic of digestive health, you could put in Canada digestive health or digestive health in Canadians, and you will see what outlets are talking about. So it's almost just doing a little bit of reverse engineering to take the keywords that you relate to your company, seeing who's talking about them, and then reaching out to those outlets and those reporters. But I always say, again, if you're new to this, starting with your local newspaper, local newspapers are still incredibly important and they love hearing about local small businesses that are doing really cool things. So reaching out to your local newspaper and just saying, hey, I'm a small business owner in this city. Here's what we're doing. I'd love to tell you a bit more. And then maybe it's not something that works for them that week if they've got lots of breaking news, but maybe next week they have a slow news week and they think, you know what, we want to do a human interest piece on this company in our city. So it's very much just seeing who's talking about what and going after those outlets. All right. How do you work around sometimes you get a news article, but then eventually it's available online for general readers unless they subscribe? Can I put a screenshot download on the website before it's not available? Absolutely. I try to caution against so to rephrase the question, if you have an outlet that has a subscriber only. So a great example of this is, and actually they have workarounds that you can't do screenshots, but All Nova Scotia, All New Brunswick here in Atlantic Canada, that is a paid platform. They have that so tightly secured that you can't even take a screenshot. You can't have a document open next to you to type what you're reading to. So they make it really tricky. But a lot of like Saltwire, for example, Saltwire will only give you one article to read. I don't recommend screenshotting the entire article to share on social media. But what I do recommend is if you can screenshot a part of it, like a quote, or if you can take a quote from that article and then put that in your social media post and link to the article. I'm also a huge fan of just taking a screenshot of the headline and then sharing it. Those are the workarounds that I do that's where I recommend going. You don't want to upset the outlet by screenshotting the entire article and then sharing it because that might hurt future opportunities, but taking a little quote or a snippet is completely fine. Great session. Thank you. Any advice for writers and new authors? Absolutely. So question for you. If you're a writer, are you suggesting, so you're a freelance writer and you want to write for outlets, or you're an author and you're writing a book and you want to get coverage for your book? Would be my follow-up question. But to start off, building relationships now is key. So if you're writing a book and you know it's coming out in 3 months, in 6 months, making sure that you are building those relationships. Okay, book authors. So reaching out to the outlets. If you know, so Globe and Mail, for instance, Globe and Mail has a huge section dedicated to books, new releases. Starting to build those relationships now and pitching them and saying, I have a book coming out. I would love to send you an advanced reader copy. Is that something I can do? Asking the questions, having those conversations. You want to start that at least 6 months before your book comes out. So just building those relationships, talking about it a lot, posting on LinkedIn. I can't express the value of LinkedIn these days. I'm seeing huge wins for clients just from posting, talking about what they're doing. They're getting speaking opportunities from posting about what they're doing on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to just put it out there a lot. I know as humans, we tend to worry if we're talking about something too much that we're getting annoying, but with algorithms on social media now, people are not seeing it nearly as much as you think they're actually seeing it. So continue to remind people, I have a book coming out. If you know someone, that's where the asking for introductions, putting that you have a book coming out and saying, if any of you know someone that I should speak to, that I should send a copy to, let me know, send me a message, reach out. Just make sure you're putting it out there. And congratulations on becoming a new author. That's very exciting. It's another great question. How do you respond to incorrect media? So to confirm, is that when they publish something incorrectly in the interview? Like they've misquoted you? If that's the case, while you're responding. Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. So they said, your website is .com instead of .ca, or something really, really wrong. Like they added 10 years to, the establishment of your business, or something that
right.
People might come back to you and say, hey, that sounds really weird, or that's wrong.
Right. So, okay. Few pieces of advice here. It's always okay to ask a journalist to edit something that's incorrect. So I like to write them a nice email and start by thanking them. So again, thank you for taking the time to interview me. Thank you for writing this article about us. But there's a typo in our it was .com and it should be .ca. You have the length of the business wrong. Like, it's okay to break down what has been incorrectly quoted or cited. Where I caution, I've had clients before that have said, well, I would have phrased it this way, or it's something very tiny that's not at the end of the day going to make a big deal. Those little things, I just let them slide. As much as it drives me crazy, I let it slide, because it is like, oftentimes when you ask a journalist, when they've already submitted their article, it's not like they can just go into a back end and change that right away. Sometimes they actually have to go through other people to get that fixed. So it is actually a big ask to get stuff fixed. But every journalist I've ever known has said, if something is misquoted, it is 100% okay to ask to change that. Now, there are exceptions. If it's print, unfortunately, that's just how the cookie crumbles. If it's already out there in the world and it's printed, they can't really do much, but they can oftentimes change the online article. So that still doesn't hurt to reach out if it's a newspaper and say, I realized the print edition went out this morning, but if you could at least change it on the website, that would be great. Another thing that I like to stress, so I have worked with clients that have, one of them, they don't capitalize the first letter of the company name, but they capitalize the second word's letter. If you have little things that you want to make sure that have been messed up in the past, don't be afraid to bold that in the email to the journalist and say, just a reminder, it is spelt like this, without the capitalization of the first letter, or like, if you have a different, like there's .com and .ca, you could say, please make sure it goes to .ca. It's okay to just let the journalists know, because they're busy people too, and we're all human and we all make mistakes. So if there's anything that you're really particular about, like spelling and things like that, make sure that you just say it's spelt like this. A great example, one of my past clients, Dr. Ashley Margison, who's a naturopathic doctor, it's actually really not cool to put Dr. Ashley Margison without the ND at the end, because naturopathic doctors have to have that stated that they are an ND and not, an MD. So I've had writers that wouldn't change that. And so going forward, when I would pitch, I would say, please make sure that at all times Ashley is referenced as Dr. Ashley Margison, ND. And they'll be like, oh, thank you. I didn't know that was, not cool to not put the ND. And I'm like, yes, it is. It's not cool. So please, thank you. So yeah, just don't be afraid they love to know that stuff, because that it's a collaborative experience, right? You're helping them write a great story, and you're giving them what they need to make sure it's awesome. So don't be afraid to reach out to them. Any other questions? We've got time for one more. And again, you have my email if you have any questions. Please don't hesitate. I'm going to make sure that everyone gets the slides. I will also send over the info for the new helper reporter out. I highly recommend signing up to it. It's a great way to identify thought leadership opportunities, just a great way to identify potential outlets. That's one of the things I always loved about it. Sometimes I would learn about new writers and new journalists and new outlets. So I'll make sure to send that along. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'm
everyone.
just going to chime in quickly, say the quick wrap up here. So, thank you so much, Crystal. That was amazing presentation. I definitely learned a lot. We'd also like to thank everyone who attended. If you guys want to come to more CEED events, go check out our Eventbrite. We host events like this all the time. They're great resources with some great people hosting, and you definitely learn a lot from them. We'd also like to let you know that CEED offers a 30-minute free consultation with a business advisor. So if you're a small business owner that would benefit from some one-on-one time with one of our professionals, head over to our website and book a call. And then if you're not following us on socials, follow us at CEEDNS. It's a great way to stay up to date on events like this, as well as other stuff. And yeah, so thank you everyone so much for coming. Crystal, thank you again. That was really good.
Thanks
yeah,
for having
have a great
me.
day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.